What a win, yeah.
So yeah, we're very lucky to have you here for the Q&A. And I hope you really enjoyed the film. Obviously, you'll see the banner that we've got behind us as well at the end. And it sort of circles everything back to where the film's set, I suppose. And we're in the Mining Institute as well. And it's a nice pairing, I think, to have the full screen here. And you mentioned that a little bit.
Yeah.
We were just chatting about sort of the relevance of the Institute of the film. And I think first thing I wanted to ask was sort of being in that community and filming there and spending quite a lot of time there, just what it was like and how that maybe filtered into the way your character developed and just the sort of experience of filming there.
Well, we're filming in 3 locations, Oldham, Burton and Easton Colliery. There was a couple of guys in the pub scene were former miners, so they brought an authenticity to it, and there was one that was actually cut out of the film, from the scene where we talked about, your father was a scar. And one went on such a foul rant about scarves. Yeah, Joe, it had to be cut out. It was just, so it just goes to show you 50 years later, 40 years later, it's still there, still in the communities, and it always will be. I mean, it was an incredible experience for both of us to be involved in it. And you couldn't help but take in the atmosphere of the old pub, and everywhere you went there was reminders of the past, the pit heads, and these colonies, a big monument on the top of the cliffs. So you were aware of it, and I never went down the pit, but I mean my junior school, I would look out the window, the pit head was 400 yards away. So I grew up in an environment where virtually everybody went to work down the pit. So I've got that in my background, even though I didn't go down myself. I mean, it was part of the film. It fed into it naturally, I think. Having a couple of angry ex-miners and certainly didn't hurt.
I'm from Sunderland, so I live only a couple of miles away from where we were filming, and wasn't alive when the kids were there, but did grow up I'm a child of post-industrial North East England. Grew up hearing only about our glories past and nothing about what our future could be, and nothing about what we as working class young people had to contribute to society. And so although I don't live in those streets where we filmed, I live in Hendon in Sunderland, and the streets are very similar in the anger and passion that exists side by side for a community that Laura experiences are the same complex feelings that I have towards Sunderland and places like where we filmed. And it can be crap, can't it? It can be really crap, but I'm really proud to know people who are fighting back every day to try and make our communities better. We met people in the streets where we filmed in Horden, like a woman called Isabel, who has lived there for 30 years, probably has kids about my age, struggling every day to make that community more safe, to retain the solidarity that existed in the pre-80s, and I'm really proud to be part of telling that story. And the story of younger people, I'm not young, but younger people in those communities who have maybe left like I did, but came back because of the love that we have for this place and the belief that we deserve better.
I mean, I'm from County Durham as well. I think you did like an amazing job at sort of just championing that, like showing that it is crap, but not doing it in like look at how crap it is sort of way. It's just sort of the reality of.
It's not people's fault, is it? It's policies who've been let down by subsequent governments of all colours for the past 40 years. There are good people who've been let down by bad policies, and I hope that the film shone a light on that, as well as the difficult and complex ways that people have been led down a dark path by politicians who are completely self-serving. It's complex, isn't it? But I believe people are good in their heart, and people want solidarity and justice, and hopefully the film tells a bit of that story.
I mean, for me, I mean, Paul Lockley, the scriptwriter, it was a very difficult line that he had to tread, because it would have been very, very easy to make the guys in the pub knuckle dragging, you know, racist lunatics, but he didn't. What he showed was good people who have been battered and battered and battered, and they've got no hope. You know, as Ken Loach and Paul have said when we talk about this, if people have no hope, then what is there for them in life? And you just see the people being beaten down. You know, I mean, it's we were both being lucky enough to do screens and Q&As like this in other parts of the country, and you know, and it resonates well virtually everywhere, because you know, I mean, I did one in Taunton, and what came out of that was talking to people there working in the NHS, and there was a lot of people working in the NHS who are immigrants, and the way they're being treated is absolutely despicable. You know, I mean, but be brought across by the agency, and the agency takes a percentage of the wage, so they're actually receiving less than the minimum wage, and they can't get accommodation. So there's a large community there where they're just totally disenfranchised. So the story, well, it's not replicated everywhere. The struggle of people fighting for fairness and equality, which is in the film, it resonates with a lot of people. You know, I mean, like I said, you said I went to Brazil, and I don't know, for a film festival, I don't know what to expect. The film got an unbelievable reception in Brazil. People identify with it because there's a lot of people feel they've got no hope, they've got no optimism, they can't see a way forward. And sadly, you know, in my personal opinion, we haven't got any politicians that are capable of inspiring people, and people just don't see any optimism. So I think what Paul was able to do with the script was show empathy for the people who, for all the comments and the statements that they made were horrendous and objectionable. He actually understood how they got to that position, and I think that was the genius of Paul, the way he wrote it. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do, and I think he got it absolutely spot on.
I'll open it up to anyone else if people have questions. Just stick your hand up.
I'd just like to ask how Ken directed you as actors.
Yeah, well, honestly, that's a question I've been asked probably more than the other. And I'll let you know when I find out. Because he doesn't really, he puts, I mean, I had this conversation with him before I started filming, and I just said, are you absolutely mad? I said, you're putting your trust in me. Because I can only focus on my partner. I mean, Claire and I had done some scenario, because when you go in for a Ken Loach film, all you do is you do improvised scenes. There's no script. So I think we did the longest that's ever been done in all of Ken's rehearsal process, and Ken was actually had to be told you need to stop. It's gone on for 17 minutes. So we didn't know each other before, but we got to know each other through this process, and we did quite a few together. So I knew how good she was going to be. But I just said to him, you're absolutely mad, you're putting your trust in me. Why? And he just said, we've seen enough of you, we know what you can do, and you won't let us down. But
he was tortured.
And I've said this before, and I've told, I'm doing film here, don't take this out of context, but Ken Loach is an evil bastard. Because, yeah, I love you a bit, Ken, but you're an evil bastard. Because the way you film with, you know, you film in sequence. So at the start of the film, you've got no idea what's going to happen at the end. And you only get the script at best the night before. So a normal day for me would be there for 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, wardrobe makeup, on the set for 8:30, 9 o'clock, days filming, back to the centre of Merton, wardrobe makeup, then as you walk out the door, the assistant director would say, that's for tomorrow, and you get the script for tomorrow. So by the time I got home, then I'd stop doing the lines for tomorrow. And sometimes even on like the scene with the dog, At the lunchtime, I didn't know what was going to happen in the afternoon.
We knew.
Yeah.
We were given the script before to prepare us for how day might be when we arrived.
Yeah, I didn't have a clue. Even as I ran down the hill, I didn't have a clue what was going to happen.
So was that like your reaction?
Oh, I had a complete, they don't really show it in the film, I had a complete emotional breakdown. Because what they'd done, you know, I'd travelled over 1,000 miles over 3 or 4 months, driving, I used to live plane when we were filming, driving down to Easington where the dog was alive and well. And in real life it's called Lola. I had to spend that much time to build up a relationship with the dog, so she would answer to a different name and she would follow me. So what they'd done was they'd made an exact replica, it's a model, down to the finest detail. So I was sitting there and basically the crew, because I was the only cast member there, the crew just left me. I was sitting in the woods, the Lambton Estate, the Chester, I was just sitting in the middle of the woods in a chair, and I was thinking, what's going to happen? And I heard these dogs bark, and I was thinking, oh my God. So then Ken came up to me, and he just said, right, TJ, it's time to do the deed. Or is it? Go. So I ran down the hill, and as I turned the corner, there was an exact replica of Mara, like, covered in blood, and I had a complete emotional breakdown. It went on for minutes, and it got to the point where Anita and Catherine, the makeup ladies, had help us off the set. I couldn't stop crying, and we were meant to film in the scene where I buried the dog that afternoon, and Ken just said, I'm not going to put you through that. But what he did say was, which was, I'm going to say hilarious, but it wasn't really. I mean, Claire Backers with this, you don't rehearse at all with Ken, but you do a lot of takes. You know, I mean, if you do a scene in less than 12 takes, it's unusual. So he came up to me after I'd done that scene where I had a complete meltdown. He was handing me short and says, it's okay, TJ, you needn't do that again. And that was only scene we didn't want to. But no, I mean, I had a complete, you know, I was just saying before, I mean, I was talking to somebody, one of these screenings, and she's a psychiatric nurse, and had the same conversation, and she said, it's mental crew, what are you doing here? But, because I don't have the experience, I'm not a professional actor, I don't have the experience and the skill set to do it. The only way to get the reaction out of me was to do it the way we've done it. If I had a script weeks in advance, and I was told, right, on Wednesday in the second week, I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done it, I don't have the ability. So it was, that's the way he does it, and that's the way how he gets a reaction from non-professional actors. But it's harsh. It really is harsh.
When you showed the film in Brazil, did you translate it or did you just...
subtitles, Portuguese subtitles, yeah.
Because I was born in Newcastle and I was having trouble understanding
Well, you know what was bizarre? I mean, I was invited to the film fest in Hamburg because, I don't know if people are aware, Ken's not very well. So he hasn't been able to do a lot of publicity for this, so he was invited to the film festival in Hamburg and he couldn't go. So he invited me instead. And there's a thing in German culture where if you stop at a German hotel, for example, all the programmes on the TV are all dubbed. It's the culture that they don't like subtitles. But the 2 screens I went to, was with subtitles. But I was then sent the trailer with the version I was going to go and release in Germany, and it was dubbed. And it was dubbed by I think he's like the #1 TV star in Germany. He has a detective program on every day, and he asked to do it. So it was absolutely surreal to watch myself with this big, deep, gravelly voice. And it was that's just been one of the examples of the whole surreal experience.
We have had people in London tell us that they've had to Google some of the words. Ben,
Yeah.
So it's a long great in the film about how to Google what the word Ben meant.
Yeah. I remember the show in London, the show with subtitles by and large.
Yeah.
And when I went to the one in Taunton, they definitely needed subtitles for that. They had trouble understanding me when I was just sitting on the plane with them and they were all
Yeah, I've been there.
And I thought the accents were absolutely brilliant, I have to say. I mean, I've listened to the and I have to show them out. I'm sure it's a very, very good programme. I think, oh my God, where did he come from? Yours were just absolutely.
I mean,
Thank you. I mean, we all spoke in our natural accent. For me, it's weird because I'm from the area that's set, really. And so it was weird for me hearing like people from Teesside and Geordies, like, what's he doing down here? But yeah, we're all North East actors. There's a couple that are based in London, but are Geordies. I say that apart from the Syrians who were.
Because you didn't try to lose any of your accent.
Oh,
it was
no,
far more
no.
authentic.
well, if you, I mean, this is, that's, I mean, I didn't see all of it, but that's the 27th time I've seen the film. And it's funny because when I watch it now, I mean, all I see is things that I hate, bloody performance, and things I do wrong. But I realised when I was talking to the guys in the pub, I was just talking normal voice. But whenever I was talking to Ebla, without even meaning to, I noticed my speech pattern slowed down. And I was more distinct with how I spoke, because if I just gabbled on like I did normally, she wouldn't have had a clue what I was saying. So it was just subconsciously I did it, and when I saw it on the film, oh wow, didn't even know I'd done that. But I think you tend to do that when you speak to someone that's not from the area, you know, you do tend to, because it is quite a rapid speech pattern that I have, so, you know, it's, but no, I mean, it was one of the, by and large, I've had really good reviews. I mean, the Telegraph hated it, which is
Right
good.
wing kids.
Yeah, quite true. One of the reviews I read which said that the accents were unbelievable and they didn't understand why they hadn't used local people. And I was just absolutely amazing.
There was definitely one on YouTube, I think it was in one paper as well. Saying none of our accents would be authentic. Interesting. I wonder if that hasn't ever been in North East.
I mean, it was. Well, I mean, we've had some fabulous experiences. I mean, we beat the Cannes, we beat the BAFTAs. You know, we made sure we got our fair share of champagne at the BAFTAs. But not to say more than my fair share. But, no, I mean, we went to the British Film Institute as well, and we did a Q&A, and that was amazing. That was the reception that we got. And there was a lad, asked if he's got any questions. That came up with there was a young lad sitting in the front, and he got up and you could tell his anxiety was off the charts. You could tell he was a nervous wreck. And he just sat there and he said, can I just ask, he said, like, all of us, he said, can I just ask how you prepared for the scene where your character talked about committing suicide? And I was just, all right, okay. And he said, because I tried to commit suicide during COVID. And we've been told, the minute the Q&A finishes, you've got to dash, you've got to go to the BAFTA building, there's a car waiting you. And I mean, Ken obviously took the first bit of an answer, then Paul, and then they just looked at me. And I really felt under pressure, and I thought, right, so I spoke to him, and I mean, he was, anxiety it was awful. So the Q&A finished, and we were just like, people asked, come on, and the three of us just said, no, we need a minute with this lad. And all three of us went down, we got his photo with us, and we talked to him. I mean, it's when things like that happen which catch you totally off guard. You weren't expecting, you know, we've done these a few times, there's a similar pattern of questions, but for somebody to make a statement like that, as brave as he was in that environment, that floored me for quite a while. It wasn't, it just totally came out of the blue, and touch wood, I hope he's okay.
It's interesting what people take from it, isn't it? Because, you know, we'll often speak about the refugee experience in Britain or post-industrial communities specifically, or our politics and the impact that has on British people. But then for somebody to resonate, for that part of the film to resonate with somebody so deeply and then feel able to speak in front of 400 people despite his crippling anxiety was really special. I think we're hoping that some of the money from tonight will be donated to a couple of charities, and in Sunderland when we had one, we donated to a refugee charity and a men's mental health charity, because I think that is a story that should be told, particularly with those communities and particularly with men, that again is an impact of our politics, and we don't speak about it or support people in the way that we should.
Just the one thing we're going to emphasise here, I mean, when we're doing this every time. I mean, Ella, it was wonderful. I mean, she lives in the Golden Hits, which is Israeli occupied territory. So we haven't seen Ella since last September. We both promised we would go out to see her in May, but obviously with current events, that's not feasible. But everybody else in the film that took the part of a Syrian family member was a genuine Syrian refugee. And we couldn't have done the film without their generosity and openness and allowing, you know, us to hear some of the stories of what they've gone through. So, you know, in terms of authenticity, you can't get more authentic than that. And, you know, I mean, talk about the scene that was cut out. Yeah, there's a scene that's cut out which is caused some, I don't know what the right word is. There's some concern, particularly among the Syrian families who took part. And that was a scene where there's an actor in the film in the wheelchair. Yeah, she's lost her legs. And in the early part of the film, there's a scene where Yara crosses the road and talks to the three sisters. And then she comes back and I just say to her, how are your friends settling? And she said, oh, they're okay, but having problems, and ask, you know, how did your friend lose her legs? And what it says in the film as well, she lost her husband, lost her daughter, lost her son, and lost her legs in the explosion. And I went, wow. And then the camera's just on my face. And it was so powerful and so emotional. And it got cut out. And Ken and Jonathan, the editor, are still torn about it. And it's caused a lot of unhappiness with the Syrian actors because they believe it undermines their part in the film. But Ken made the decision that it was just too stark and harsh, like scene in the film. Yeah, but that is her story in real life. That's what actually happened to her in real life. She lost her husband and her children and her legs in the explosion. Now, you know, I mean, because of the way Ken works, I was kept away from the Syrian families and Ebla for large parts of the film because he said he doesn't want to make familiarity between me. So it wasn't until quite late on the film I got to hear some of the stories. And I mean, it's incredibly humbling. But without their generosity, without their openness and willingness to share what they've gone through, we couldn't have made the film.
Well,
is there any thought of putting that scene back into the film?
It's in the deleted scenes apparently, so there's a DVD out there. Thank you for all coming while it's available on DVD and Netflix and YouTube. But there are deleted scenes on the DVD, and apparently that is in there with a few others.
You can tell I'm from London and I can understand you, so that's quite good.
Oh, that's good. I've just been in a different country delivering training all weekend, so I'm slow in a minute. Hasna is that woman's name, and with her sisters Rabia and Saba, they have set up a catering company. After they did all the food, you know, that we were all eating together, the Syrian food was cooked by the Syrian people in the film. Of course, they were compensated for that, and because of how delicious we all found it, they've set up a catering business and put on community meals in County Durham. It's called A Taste of Syria, and so although there was that disappointing experience, what they've got out of the film is that kind of sense of community and the economic benefit both from being paid as part of the film and as setting up this catering company. A Taste of Syria. Hasna, Rabia, Sada.
I mean, there was another scene that was cut out, probably because it was a scene where the back lane where I carried the carpet in, and further in the scene, the mother comes out with a tray of baklava. Baklava. With a tray. So I think we did about 15 takes of this. So we would then climbing off the ceiling by the sugar. I think that's why it was cool. We were probably just looking manic. We were just what next? What next? You know. No, I mean, you know, we've both been very lucky. You know, it's you know, I mean, to look back on it, you know, I mean, it's five and a half years for me since the start of 2019 when we first started the build up to this. So it's been a, you know, it's been an incredible experience for both of us. You know, met some wonderful people along the way, had some fun, had some tears. I quite a bit of champagne when we shouldn't have. But no, it's been an unbelievable experience.
Have you got any other plans for the future?
Me personally, no.
No?
No.
Can I just ask about, because you said you're not professional actors,
No.
how does that, because obviously Trevor Fox was who is a professional actor, so how does it work? How does the cast come together?
Well, I mean, cut a long story short, basically in 2014, right? Yeah, but I will cut it short. Right, I was in the fire service for 30 years. And for most of that time I was a trade union official. So I've made a lot of links to labour movement such like 2014, a guy called Tony Dowling, some of you might know, was contacted by 16 Films and said, we're coming to the North East to make a film. Would you be interested in coming to the chat? And just said, no, it's not for me. So they basically said, do you know any gobshites? You thought of me. So I went along for a meeting, not knowing what it was going to be about, and I literally bumped into Ken LOACH. And that led to a very small part in I, Daniel Blake. They then came back a couple of years later and I got a fabulous little part, sorry I missed you. But what they do is they go out to communities. And they go out, like, I mean, when I first talked to Paul Lampy about this in early 2018, at the time I was working in a pub in a former pig village in County Durham, from the ex-wife, which was lovely. But at the same time, he was already talking, Paul was already talking to refugee groups and people who were helping people. So he got into those communities, and I mean, I've got this to look and chance. So Tony Dowling had said yes, I would never got a part, but to get a part in a Ken LOACH film, it's bloody hard work. You know, the scenes we did were difficult. You know, I mean, I mean, Trevor Fox first auditioned for Ken LOACH about 30 years ago. And Trevor was the only professional, I mean, some of the other people in the film will say that they're actors, but they haven't really done a lot of work. Trevor's got over 30 years of acting experience, and he was the only professional actor in the whole cast, with a body of work behind him. So Trevor was gutted that he didn't get the part of TJ because he wanted it. And I did scenes with Trevor. And Trevor was incredibly gracious and helpful and kind to me, and I'll always be grateful to him. But basically, they go out into the community and they try to find people who are community activists, like Claire. You know, and I mean, I mean, your boss was in it as well.
Yes, my story is a bit different.
Yeah.
I've never acted before. I was introduced to Paul when he was doing that research period that Dave's described, because I'm a community organiser by trade, organising across the North East to bring people together across difference and try and build our collective power to create structural change. But prior to that, I was working with young people who were being drawn into the politics of the far right. And I work all over the North East. Young people would be referred to me, and then I'd spend some time with them trying to help them disentangle their political anger from their outward expressions of racism. And so when Paul was researching the film, I guess he was introduced to me because that aligns quite somewhat with the theme of the old dog. So I had a chat with them, so I've never met a film writer before. Script writer, I don't even know the proper word for it, that's how unprofessional I am. And that's nice, and that was kind of it. And then COVID was in the middle, so it was 2019 when I met Paul. COVID was in the middle, and to be honest, if the audition call out went out immediately after I'd met Paul, I probably wouldn't have went for it just because of the time I was in my life. But luckily I had a really good therapist during COVID. And so by the time they were actually casting, something came out through the trade union, just saying they were looking for women between like mid-30s, mid-50s who are active in their local community, as Dave says, and if you're interested, put your photo in. And a friend of mine and I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? At best we'll get a weekend LOACH, at worst we won't, whatever. And so we got asked to go in, and it was just a conversation about our life, really. And I just got this call a couple of days later, will you come back and do some improv? Yeah. Improv? You want us to act as part of this audition process? I didn't even know I was going into an audition process, to be honest. But yeah, it was really fun doing the auditions actually. Yeah. It was probably much easier for us non-actors to go in and be told, this is the scenario, do this. Than here's a script, learn and do it. Ugh, that would have really put me off. But yeah, it was fun.
I mean, I call him Dr. Loach because there's no script and he just lets you go with it.
In the auditions.
Yeah, in the auditions, yeah. I mean, he just lets you go with it. And the stuff that comes out and you've got no idea where it comes from. You know, and I mean, as I say, we did a few. And the last one we did was, I was a jaded trade unionist. I was a young active trade unionist. You know, and I had to say it with all due respect, Pet. You know?
You didn't have to say that to us. You chose to say that to us.
I did, yeah. And I haven't got a reaction. But,
I thought you just there.
yeah, I mean, it's the way that he gets stuff out of people, it's incredible. But like I must say, you know, I've got to qualify that when you are filming, there is a script. There's a myth going around that you can just wing it. You can't. You know, there's an actor who was in one of Ken's films a few years ago. He's repeated this line that there's no script, and Paul Allen's not happy. He spent a year writing it, and then someone just says, it was all your own work, I didn't have a script. Which went down there and let them. So Paul makes sure that I remember that there is a script, and it took him a long time. But you are allowed a little bit of latitude. And the thing is, because you're not professional actors, I don't have the skills or the experience or the ability to be word perfect every time. And Ken's perfectly fine with that. As long as you state the general theme of it and you respect the script. But if you say, I mean, there was one line in the film where the big dog comes out the back lane and I said, you can put a saddle on that bastard. Now I just said that off the cuff. And Ken went, well, I love that, that's staying in. But you do have a script. You know, and I mean, you know, Paul's a very, 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 very clever man, and he's a lovely fella. It's been an honour to become his friend. But I think the work he does and he's currently doing is unbelievable.
Yeah, I just wondered, in terms of how the film might be being used for the good, do you know anything about that? Do you know anything about how it might be being used in schools or communities where people are challenged by some of, well, all of the issues within it, because there are multiple issues, aren't there, that cross over?
Every screening that we do, people ask about whether it's being used in schools. I think the language and some of the issues have meant that the uptake in schools hasn't necessarily been there in the same way it has in community settings.
Yeah.
So in my day job I work with all sorts of different civil society organisations, including the church. And the Church of England have done a lot of community screenings all over the North East. That have been free to access, always available. Sometimes we've had food with them as well. We have a similar thing in Hartlepool, where it's used to start community conversations. But unfortunately, I think because of some of the language, not yet in schools. What I will also say though is that it's, as Dave said, resonating in different parts of the world where far-right sentiment is either on the rise or has been on the rise. Dave was in Brazil, as he mentioned, that resonated there, and when I was in Sweden this weekend teaching community organisations how to use our methodology of bringing people together to combat some of the far-right rhetoric and far-right policies that are currently sweeping across Europe, but unfortunately quite embedded within Swedish society now. So in community settings, I think there's a lot of legs, but we'll need to do some work to get to young people. But I would really wish that we could, if you've got any ideas.
I mean, what Studio Canado, like, what they did for I time in Surrey University, what they did for this as well, is after about 6 to 8 weeks of it being released in cinemas, they made it available for community screens for a fee. I think it's about £95. They get a copy of the film, and that was, they really pushed that. Not long, just a few weeks after the release of the cinema, and there were some fabulous videos available around the October time last year, where in and around London, there was lots of community screens, like I said, they all ate together, you know, eat together, you stick together. I mean, that's the mantra of the film. I mean, I've been lucky enough to say, you know, to go to other parts of the country, you know, and I did a screening in Whitechapel, and I got off the tube in Whitechapel, and I mean, I never been to Whitechapel before in my life.
That's where my office is.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh. So I walked out to the hotel in Whitechapel, and it was, it's not an image or what's the word I'm looking for? It was a completely disparate community. Completely. I've never been in we were walking down, and it was just completely different to my experience anywhere else. And when I did the screen at the cinema, and we did a Q&A afterwards, and it was some of the most surprising comments I'd seen, in a good way, because people, I mean, there's all different types of members of the community down there, from huge, massive different parts of the world, and some of the comments and questions caught me out because they were that, they understood it a lot more, they read more into it than I had personally. I mean, it was incredible. Then with the following day, I went to Soho, and it was such a middle class audience. It was completely different. I mean, the one thing I have to say, I mean, when we went, I can't remember if it was BAFTA or BFI, somebody made a comment, Claire, about BAFTA. What was it? It's all just.
Oh yeah, so we had this beautiful time. We'd done that screening at BFI's, Day Said the Young Man. Went across to BAFTA. It was quite late, and we were having dinner afterwards. And it, you know, it went down well. We did Q&A like this, and someone, you know, who may not have been to County Durham before, kind of came up and said, "Oh well, you know, isn't this talking too positively about communities where everyone's just on drugs? Should we be really talking positively about those communities?" Excuse me. We're in Soho. Like, there's probably cocaine residue on the toilet you just come out of, and you're telling me that people in my community shouldn't be taking drugs, but people in your community are right. I didn't say it like that. So I just find it interesting how we choose to talk about different communities who engage in drug taking, and how we seek to demonise some, and what purpose is that serving in society. We just kind of went,
I mean, I had a very well-spoken guy come up to me and just said, I've got to say the sets were remarkable. And I thought he meant the pub. And I said, well, you see the Victoria pub. I said, oh, no, I don't mean the pub. I mean the streets, those sets were remarkable. I thought he was taking a mick. And I had to say to him, they're not sets, that's real life, that's reality for people. I mean, I was asked to do an interview with a French journalist, so I went down to Horton, where the streets were filmed, and I tried to explain to this French journalist that what's happening. Basically, all the people that come in this country, they come basically to the southeast, and because of the cost of housing, they're just shipping them up to the north. And this French journalist couldn't get his head around it. And I had a photographer with us. So this photographer's filming, and then it was pure chance and coincidence. A typical white van man was standing there, and he came across and said, "You're not buying them houses, are you?" And I was like, "No, I'm doing an interview with him." And he just went on to tell us that he just bought 2 houses together. He renovated them, he showed us very proud. I've got to say, it was very basic what he's done. But he'd been contacted by London Council direct and said, right, okay. Now at the time, when I did my research, it was a typical 2 up, 2 down with a backyard. At the time, it was the rent for a home was about £350 to £400 a month for one of these houses. London Council said, we'll guarantee you £650 a month. Because currently we're paying £1,600 a month for a 1-bedroom flat in London. So the more houses you get, the more we can ship up. That was the term that was used. We can ship them up there. The minute this French journalist heard this, he understood. And that's why the line in the film, you know, they don't have them in Chelsea and Westminster. Of course they don't. Because they send them up here. And they send them up here, which has got the least infrastructure, the least support. Well, you all know as well as me, you go around these villages, which I did with Ken and Paul and Mick, you know, and all the banks have gone, the post office have gone, the libraries have gone, the community centres have gone, the pubs have gone. All of that's been taken out of the communities and nothing's been put back. So to put a group of people who come from a war zone, who've gone through hell, put them in a village with little or no support, and basically they're relying on local people, church groups, and good people to help them out. I mean, the day that we were filming this interview, it was a year since we filmed there. And in that time, there's a large Nigerian community, which wasn't there a year earlier. There's now over 100 Nigerian family members being moved up there because the housing's so cheap. And, you know, in the line of the film where it's £8,000, again, that was challenged in a couple of newspapers. You can go on YouTube, and there's a guy in Sunderland does tours around these villages where you buy a house for £5,000.
I'll just add on to what you say there as well. So there are immigrant communities, families, individuals who are moved to more deprived areas, but they are like white British families as well, who are seen as often the ones who are seen as quote unquote problems.
Yeah, true.
And again, that's just like offloading the costs of social care, services, all of that onto communities that have nought. And you know, Ajahn Blair tells that story, doesn't it? So this kind of continuation of that story.
I think just talk about housing prices as well. I'm not sure how true it was, but in Jordan there was like an article in the paper about how some houses for like £1. Houses, but there's in those communities there's like houses that are hoarded up and people live in them still. Like it's total like.
And what's Isabel supposed to do? You know, just to refer back that woman who supported us to understand the area. Her and her husband have lived there years. You know, there was a pit house, you know, and what are they supposed to do now? They struggled to buy the house. It's got a lovely extension on, it's kept dead nice, isn't it?
Beautiful.
What's going to happen to her? And it's a bit like, what's Trevor's character called again? Charlie. It's a bit like Charlie, it's devastating for people. What happens to me now?
Just because how long that took to film?
30 and a half days.
Really?
We did 30 days, then went to come back a fortnight later for the final scene at the gala, where we walked with our banner. I mean, it was, so there was no rehearsal, but the day before the Friday, we thought, right, we're going to have a big practice. Now, I mean, the gala is my favourite day of the year, I've been going for years. I've carried my union banner, the FBU banner, quite a few times. So Ken basically said to us, right, you tell everybody what to do. And I said, well, I know what's going to happen here. The minute we walk in the street, somebody's going to say, it's tomorrow. When we left the building, it's tomorrow. So, but now when we walked with the banner on the actual day of the gala, I mean, it was an incredible experience. I mean, lots of people showed an interest. It was brilliant. It was great. But you know, as I say, I mean, that was just half a day, and we then sort of all of us just like collapsed on the grass, didn't we? Had a drink or two, we were just trying to, I mean, it was an absolutely overwhelming experience, physically and emotionally, because, you know, we haven't done this before. So for all of us, it was overwhelming. And when we finished, it was just a matter of like,
Well, I just had to go back to work the next day. I was working the whole way through. It was like that for you and Nebula, but me, I was filming one day and going to work the next.
yeah.
Well, it's a phenomenal piece of work, isn't it? Second time I've seen it now, because you see different things when you see things again. It's just a privilege to see it and have you here.
I saw something tonight, because on all the promotional posters which we've got, it's of us carrying a banner, and there's a lad.
Random lad.
There's a random lad.
Random lad.
Which, and I saw him tonight in the film.
Ah,
He's in the
it's
pub.
still random.
I know he's in the pub.
Is he?
Aye. He's walked past you, you clear up. And we've only seen, look, it's this kid who just appeared on the poster. And I saw him 27th or whatever this time I've seen it. I was like, oh, that's where he comes from.
Somebody's son, like
I mean, he's right front and centre of the poster. You know, and I appreciate everybody coming tonight. It's you know, it's like this class said, it's available elsewhere. But I think it is worth seeing on the big screen. It does make a difference. I mean, when we saw it at Cannes, it was on the biggest screen in Europe. You know, it's, oh God, I can't remember.
2,500 people in the pictures.
Yeah, and what they don't warn you about is when the film finishes, and I mean the film got a 50-minute standing ovation, but that, I mean it was largely because Ken is adored. He's adored and worshipped in Cannes. We stood up, and then, thank everybody, and then there's a camera just suddenly appears there. And you
That's on YouTube too, if you want to imagine.
and you just suddenly see a huge heat about 50 foot wide.
Right.
Nothing. No, I mean, that was just, I mean, one night we had to leave the hotel out the back door because Ken gets stopped everywhere. And because he's such a lovely, lovely man, whenever anybody stops him, he always finds time and have a selfie with them. You know, I mean, there was a guy came up to him and said, "Hi Ken, remember me? We met such and such, it was about 30 years ago." And I guarantee, well I know, Ken didn't have a clue who he was. That man walked away thinking, my God, you remember him? He's an, I mean, I've said he's an evil bastard. But what an absolute, I mean, just the biggest stuff, one of the biggest things for me was just the amount of time we were able to spend with Ken. You know, and I have to say that what's happened though in terms of the publicity, the Labour Party, there's nothing short of a disgrace. He does more in one day than most Labour frontbenchers have done in a lifetime. 60 years of fighting against injustice, fighting against the system, standing up for the underdog. He's done that for 60 years. And to get the treatment he's received recently is absolutely unforgivable. And some of the people that have been leading that fight against him in the Labour Party should hang their heads in the shield. One of them is now my Labour Party candidate in North Durham. A despicable individual who has not one socialist bone in his body, yet has a nerve to criticise Ken LOACH. But I've been with Ken when somebody's come up in the centre of Newcastle, screamed in his face, so you still don't believe the Holocaust happened. No one deserves that, especially when you look at what Ken's done in his life. You know, I mean, he's a wonderful man. He's not in the best health at the moment. Hopefully he gets some of his strength back, because he had a nasty fall last year and then had a setback with that. But I mean, it is without doubt his last film. So that was, we did feel the responsibility knowing that. But I mean, with the three of us, because Trevor, as I've said, Trevor was godsend for me. You know, briefly, I'm just going to tell you this. I mean, he came up to me the first day and said, "Hi Dave, I've been in this business a long time." He said, "If you need to have a chat at any time, you need a bit of help, and I'm here for you." And I remember sitting there in the Green Centre just saying, "You patronising bastard." The following day, I kid you not, I went and Trevor could have a word. And he was a gentleman, he was so helpful to me, So supportive, he was wonderful. But for Emma, Claire and myself, we had the imposter syndrome times 10. You know, and so there was one day in particular where one of us wasn't having a good morning. And we said, right, look, we told, right, okay, break for lunch. And I just said, no, we need 5 minutes. And we sat there, sounded very hippie-ish, but we sat there and held hands. And we just said, listen, we're going to help each other here because nobody else understands what we're going through. Nobody does. Because we had the responsibility, and we didn't have the experience. So we call ourselves 3 musketeers, and we're still in a WhatsApp group now. We'll be messaging her that day, because Emma's had a fabulous day today, because she works in the theatre. She's had a fabulous day today in the theatre. So we're leaning on each other a hell of a lot. How can we got through it without Claire and then Larry, Sharon, all the crew? I mean, the crew, they spend as much time casting the crew as they do the cast. You know, because the crew are just as important as the cast. And there's no egos, there's no hierarchy. You know, everyone's treated exactly the same. You know, so we're both, you know, I've said numerous times outside of, you know, births, deaths and marriages, this has been the most impactful thing in my life. You know, it's been incredible. I'm just so lucky.
Well, you didn't need to have imposter syndrome because you were both amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of me, but at the time we didn't feel that, did we?
You know, one time, I think it was just before that actually, excuses if I swear, you mic up all the time, and you know, as a non-professional, you don't realise that they can hear you all the time. So one day I was saying this, am I shit? Am I shit? And Bray Beckett, the sound designer, engineer, I've been shooting homework. He came up to us and he said, Claire, you're not shit. Because he was hearing it all the time. All of the cast and all of the crew it was a real team effort. Everyone really had each other's back, and the care that we offered to each other, but also that we, I hope, offered to the communities that the film is about and contributed to the research was, yes, second to none. It was a real privilege.